Hi everybody, hope you're doing well today on this Friday morning. Just want to share something with you from the Bible, a few verses that will hopefully bless you wherever you are this day. This week I've been reading from one book of the Bible called Hosea. And Hosea is a book in the Old Testament, about 700-800 years before Jesus was born, it was written. And it's a book about a God who is faithful and dependable and who keeps his promise, and his relationship with his people who are not. You could argue that's the story of the whole Bible in one sense. But Hosea really focuses on the faithfulness of God and the unfaithfulness of his people. And Hosea is a prophet who is told to illustrate something to the people in a very strange and bizarre and kind of heartbreaking way. Hosea the prophet is told by God to marry a woman whom he knows would be unfaithful to him in the marriage. He knows this woman is going to let him down and go after other men, a woman called Gomer. But sure enough, because he's obedient to God, he marries this woman, and sure enough, she is unfaithful, just as Hosea knows she's going to be. But he's told to marry her and love her all the same. And this is a picture that Hosea is told to paint to the people, really, as God's way of saying to the people, this is what my love is like for you. And indeed what his love is like for us this day. His love for the people is that of a husband for a wayward, dishonest, unfaithful, undependable, rebellious wife. That's the love of God. It's a different type of love to what we might think of when we think of the love of God. Different type of love to the love we maybe see in the world around us. It's a love that's often a misunderstood love. It's not a love that turns a blind eye to evil. That's not what's being said here. It's a love that is willing to call out injustice and wrongdoing and hates what is evil. But it's not a love that flat out abandons the sinner. God's love is a love that is persistent with rebels like you and me. When we get to chapter 6 of this short book in Hosea, God's people Israel have felt the consequences for their rebellion. They've rejected God, they've rejected the life-giving laws that he has given for them, and they've gone off and served all kinds of other gods and embraced these evil, awful practices, and as such they've dealt with the consequences of that. Sin does not help us in the long run. It may bring a temporary relief to our situation, but rejecting God, though it may look appealing, it brings ultimately a false sense of security and a false peace that is neither safe nor is it satisfying. So in chapter 6 of Hosea, God is encouraging the people to turn back to him. Hosea the prophet speaks to them, and we see here this God who, even though he hates their sin, and we see this in the opening chapters of Hosea, who feels a righteous anger towards them and for what they've done, he still extends his arms of love and grace. He is still rich in mercy. Here's what the first 3 verses of Hosea chapter 6 says. It's Hosea speaking to the people saying, "Come, let us return to the Lord, for he has torn us and he will heal us. He has wounded us and he will bind up our wounds. He will revive us after 2 days, and on the 3rd day he will raise us up, so we can live in his presence. Let us strive to know the Lord. His appearance is as sure as the dawn. He will come to us like the rain, like the spring showers that water the land." What is it we have here? What is the experience of these people who have rejected God and have embraced evil and are now dealing with the consequences of that and ready to turn back to God? What does it mean? It means here that they learn that God has torn them, but the same God who has torn them is the God who's going to heal them. The God who has wounded them for their sin is the same God who's going to bind up their wounds and restore them and restore their joy. This is what it means for Israel back then, many, many years ago. For Israel's sin, it goes, the people sin, he has torn us, he will heal us. But what about for us today? For us today, living 2,500 plus years on, after the time when Christ came to this earth, what does it mean for us? We have a slightly different picture. Isaiah, who wrote roughly about the similar time as Hosea many years ago, a prophet who existed in roughly the same time, he speaks in chapter 53 of his prophecy about this faithful servant whom God would one day send to bear the sin of the people, who would take the guilt and punishment that these people had and deserved. He would take it upon himself. Isaiah 53 tells us that the punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds, him suffering as it were, we are healed. This of course is pointing to Jesus Christ, who came over 7 centuries after those words were written. So as we've said already, for Israel it goes, the people sin, God punishes them, God heals them. Hosea 6 verse 1. But for us today, it goes, the people, that's you and me, sin. God punishes Jesus, pouring out his anger and his wrath on his willing servant Christ, the Son of God, who bears our sin upon the cross. And by that, God heals us. Know this today, friends. The peace that you're looking for in your life is found in the one who went to the cross. Who went to the cross to bear our sin and our shame. But the calling for us is the same as it was for the people at the time of Hosea. And that is to return to the Lord. Let us strive to know the Lord, it says in verse 3. If you're a Christian today, regardless of how long you've been a Christian, there's a likelihood that even in your day-to-day life, even though you maybe have known Christ for a while, bad habits will set in your Christian life. Sin perhaps will take root there in different ways. You'll be tolerating things that maybe you know shouldn't be tolerated, and you maybe find yourself today out of shape in terms of your walk with the Lord. The calling is to return to him. And the process of returning to him for Israel back then is the same as it is for us just now. To return to God means to let go and to walk away from whatever junk needs to be left behind in our lives. And when we come to him in repentance, we know, as it says here in verse 3, that his appearance is as sure as the dawn. He will come to us like the rain, like the spring showers that water the land. This is the experience that repentant people in their hearts who know they have done wrong, who know they need the mercy of God and a relationship with him, this is their experience when they return to God. Not coming before an angry judge, who's ready to strike them down at any moment, but a God who loves them. Knowing him is like refreshing showers that soothe your soul. He brings rest to our soul. So return to the Lord today, no matter who you are, whether it be for the first time in your life, and maybe you've never trusted in Jesus before, or if it's for the 1,000,000th time, and you need to return back to him and leave something behind in your life that is unpleasing to him. Because in our God, we know that Jesus Christ has paid the price for our wrongdoing and for our sin, and we can have peace with him this day, and that is the greatest thing in the world. God bless you.